Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most powerful ideas from Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it's all captured in a simple phrase, mind your own business.
Okay, so here's what we've got lined up. We're going to start with a mind-blowing story about a company you definitely know. Then, we'll break down the huge difference between your job and your business. We'll expose a super common trap that keeps people stuck financially, then show you the actual blueprint for building real wealth. And to wrap it all up, we'll reveal the one golden rule that changes the entire game.
So, to really get this whole idea, we have to start with the most famous fast food joint on the planet.
I mean, if someone asked you that, what would you say? Hamburgers, right? That's what a whole room full of MBA students thought when the founder, Ray Kroc, asked them that exact question. You can just imagine it. They all chuckled, like, what a silly question. But Kroc was dead serious, and his answer, well, it's the key that unlocks this entire way of thinking.
And there it is, so simple, but so powerful. See, his profession, what he did day to day, was selling burgers. But his business, the thing that was actually building his massive fortune, was acquiring the valuable land underneath every single one of those golden arches. That's the difference.
Okay, so how does a story about burgers and real estate apply to you and me? Well, it all comes down to understanding this critical distinction. Getting this one thing right is literally the first step to financial independence.
Think of it like this. Your profession is what you do to pay the bills. You trade your time for a paycheck. But your business is what you own that makes money for you, even when you're not working. Most people spend their entire lives focused on their profession, which means their actual business, their wealth-building machine, is completely neglected.
And this is where so many of us get tripped up. We start to confuse our expensive possessions with our business, and that is a really, really dangerous trap.
Robert Kiyosaki tells this great story about a time he needed to get a loan from a bank. Now, all his cash was tied up in real estate investments, so he tried to use all his fancy personal belongings as collateral. So he writes it all down. You know, the art he collected, the new golf clubs, the designer suits, the brand new car, everything that looks like a sign of wealth. It looked like a pretty impressive list.
But you know what the bank said? Nope. They looked at his list and didn't see assets. They just saw stuff. And not just stuff, but stuff that was losing value every single day. That new car? It probably lost a chunk of its value the second he drove it off the lot.
And that leads us to the simplest, most brutal definition of a liability. It is anything that takes money out of your pocket. That's it. Your car payment, your mortgage, credit card debt, they are financial anchors that are constantly pulling you down.
So if that's the trap that keeps people stuck, how in the world do you get out? You get out by finally, truly, starting to mind your own business.
And on the other side of the coin, we have the only definition of an asset that really matters. An asset is anything that puts money into your pocket, period. You just have to ask one question. Does it pay me to own this? If the answer is yes, then congratulations, that's an asset.
So your real business isn't a fancy title or a corner office. It's your personal collection of assets. We're talking about things like stocks, real estate that pays you rent, or maybe a small business that doesn't need you there 24/7. These are like your financial employees, and they work around the clock to make you money.
And this is where it all comes together in this beautiful, simple loop. It's a four-step process. 1, you earn money from your job. 2, you use a piece of that money to buy real assets. 3, those assets start generating their own income. And 4, you take that new income and buy even more assets. You just keep this wheel spinning until eventually the money from your assets is more than enough to live on.
All right, we've covered the what and the how. Now for the final piece of the puzzle. This is a simple change in behavior that makes all the difference. Let's look at two paths. The common path is you get paid, you buy a luxury item like a new car, and now you're stuck with the payments. The wealthy path flips that script. They build their assets first. Then they wait for the income from those assets to pay for the luxury. The luxury is the result, not the goal. And that's the real secret. The ultimate feeling of wealth doesn't come from having the fancy thing. It comes from knowing that you built a financial engine that can buy that thing for you, free and clear without creating any stress. It's about owning the portfolio that pays for the car, not just owning the car.
So really, it all comes down to this one major shift in your focus. Stop thinking only about your job and start thinking about your business. Your profession is what helps you survive month to month, but your business, your asset column, that's what will buy you your freedom. So the only question left is, what business will you start minding today?